There's a lot of talk right now about teams making the Godfather offers to the Bears for the number 1 overall pick. They come to those offers they can't refuse. As a fan base that just made a move for the number 1 overall pick last year, I think Panther fans should be consulted first, right? If you had a buddy just built a deck in his backyard, you're going to start to build a deck in your backyard. You give him a call, right? Hey, what pitfalls should I be looking for? What'd you get caught up on? Well, any advice, any shortcuts, right? Well, what's the right way to do this? What kind of paint should I use, right? You do the whole thing. So if there's a team out there that's looking at making a move for the number 1 overall pick, hey, you guys just did this last year. Didn't go great. What should we be concerned about? Well, number 1 response would be, if you're going to trade away next year's first, make sure you're not the worst team in the NFL, because it's going to sting if you have to give up the number 1 overall pick next year.
Yeah.
But that's like saying, hey, if you're going to build the deck, make sure it doesn't collapse. It's like, okay, well, what led to the collapse, right? Give me the details. What was the thing that held you up? The first thing you must do, right? And all of these teams, Atlanta, Washington, all of these teams that are being considered for these big moves up to the number 1 overall pick, the first thing you must do, and it will not be fun, is you need to have a really, really honest, brutal evaluation of your team. I'm talking about, go get somebody who doesn't like you to evaluate your roster. Somebody who thinks you're an idiot to evaluate your roster, and make them go into an extreme detail. Make them put together a PowerPoint presentation of each position group. There used to be, I forget who did it. And I didn't even think about it till just now. But it popped into my head as like a nostalgic memory. There used to be a website that used to, before the NFL season, would do reasons why your team stinks. And they'd do 32 editions, and they would give your team, and it doesn't matter if you are the 2-time defending Kansas City Chiefs with an all-world quarterback and an all-world coach. They would find reasons as to why you're going to finish like dead last. Be like, well, Chris Jones isn't going to be re-signed, and he's really the engine that makes the defense go, and without him, everything's going to collapse. So you need to find whoever wrote those articles and talk about your team. The Panthers had the 9th pick last year. So they were not the worst team by any stretch the previous year. They're not the worst team in the NFL.
7-10.
But they were not prepared to give up everything that they needed to give up for the number 1 pick and to then still have enough on the roster to support their number 1 pick. That's what you need to be honest with yourself. If you are picking at the top after everything you gave up to move to the top, is your roster realistically good enough to support that number 1 overall pick? There's an ESPN article out right now. The headline was, when I clicked it, 3 trade offers for Bears number 1 NFL draft pick, and then it's a little slash, 3 trade offers for the Bears for Justin Fields. I picked one of the potential offers for the number 1 overall pick. It was from the Atlanta Falcons. This article suggested that the offer might be the number 8 pick this year, number 8 overall, first rounder, Atlanta's first rounder in 2025, Atlanta's first rounder in 2026, Atlanta's second rounder in 2025, Atlanta's second rounder in 2026. 3 first-round picks, including this year's number 8 overall, 2 second-round picks. You may be saying that is very, very rich. Why would anyone give that up? Well, that's darn near exactly what the Panthers gave up last year to move from number 9 to number 1. They gave up 2 first-rounders and DJ Moore, who I would consider worth a first-rounder, and then 2 second-rounders. So if Atlanta does that, here's the question they have to ask. Are you good enough without those picks to support Caleb Williams over the first 4 years of his career? Because if you're not, you can't make the trade. as much as it would be exciting, as fun as it would be on draft day to turn in the card that says Caleb Williams, quarterback, University of Southern California, and as exciting as it would be to have that introductory press conference where you talk about how he can throw from all platform angles and he can throw with all kinds of bad footwork and he can see things out of the back of his head, you'd be going like, okay, so he's got eyes in the back of his head. Over the next 4 years, is he going to need eyes in the back of his head, on the side of his head, on the front of his head, eyes on his shoulder, eyes on his back left heel, because guys are going to be coming at him from every single angle because you traded away all of the picks that you would have needed to protect him and or to have wide receivers get open and or to have a defense that makes it so you don't have to score 45 points a game and drop back every play? That's the lesson the Panthers learned, and that's what everyone else calling up should be like, hey, what should we look for? What should I be looking for if I'm going to make this trade up to number 1? And the Panthers, they won't do this because it's competitive, but what they would say if you were buddies would say, hey, man, listen, you might need everything you're going to trade away to make the pick work. And that is a rock and a hard place, right? There's no way to make that work. You can't have your picks and trade them too. That's a playoff. You can't have your cake and eat it too, right?
Yeah.
You can't make your picks to get those young players to help develop alongside your number 1 overall pick and also trade them away to get your number 1 overall pick. Would you be more confident in Bryce Young if you had the number 1 overall pick this year?
Yeah.
Yes, you would, right? But you can't because you traded that away to get Bryce Young.
And it's not just sustainable for this season or even next year. It's the next several years because you're giving up those picks. You're anticipating those guys, if even just minimum playing their rookie contract 4 or 5 years. So it's looking at, okay, what do you have on your roster now? Are we going to be able to afford to keep them because we're sacrificing other guys that we can replace them with? That's the big conundrum that you fall into.
To me, it's the first 4 years of a quarterback. You need all resources to help them. Mm-hmm. And then if you hit, right, if the quarterback is what you thought he is, you start paring everything back and looking at him saying, all right, you got to make up for that, right?
Yeah.
The first 4 years of a starter for Patrick Mahomes, he had Tyreek Hill. Then it's like, you know what? We're signing you a big contract. We're gonna take away Tyreek Hill, and you're gonna have to do it anyway.
We can't afford all of this.
Yes. And so that's what it is. Like if you're giving up your first rounder this year, your first rounder next year, your first rounder the year after, your second rounder next year, your second rounder the year after, are you going to be good enough your first 4 years while Caleb Williams gets to the point that you can say, all right, now you don't get anything. All right, now we're taking guys away and you're going to have to make do anyway.
Because if you miss,
and
like you're setting your franchise back major.
Yes, but the one thing I'll say about that is everybody knows that. You are taking that risk. Like when you trade up and draft someone number 1 overall, what you are saying is this will work or I will be looking for a job. Like you are completely aware of that. I think Scott Fitterer was completely aware of that. Traded up, drafted Bryce Young and said, we're going to see dramatic improvement or I will be looking for a job. And guess what? He's looking for a job. That's just the way of the world, right? You don't make a big move like that without complete awareness of I'd be setting the franchise back, I'd be setting it all back, and I will have to pay the piper at some point. The flip side is if it works, you had a job for the next 15 years, and you get to look like a genius. You're like, every wide receiver I pick works. It's like, yeah, probably the Hall of Fame quarterback you drafted had something to do with that.
Doesn't hurt.
Everyone's like, oh, look at Belichick. He drafted a quarterback from Kent State in the 7th round, and he turned into a playoff legend. And I'm like, well, yeah, he was working out with Tom Brady all offseason, Julian Edelman. Brady might have had something to do with that.